Pledge of Allegiance. If Miss O'Donnell would like to lead us in pledge. Great, thank you. That brings us into discussion, possible action on matters emanating from executive session. Could I have a motion to approve the stipulated agreement number 1 regarding student conduct as presented in executive session? We have a motion by Ms. Grant. Do we have a second? Second. And a second by Ms. Makowski. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Aye. Noted that Ms. Malone abstains. Could I then have a motion to approve the stipulated agreement number 2 regarding student conduct as presented in executive session? We have a motion by Ms. Gallo. Do we have a second? Second. And a second by Ms. O'Donnell. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Noting that Ms. Malone abstains. That motion passes. Could I then have a motion to approve the stipulated agreement number 3 regarding student conduct as presented in executive session? We have a motion by Ms. O'Donnell. Do we have a second? And a second by Ms. Makowski. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Again, noting that Ms. Malone abstains, that motion passes. Could I have a motion to approve the stipulated agreement number 4 regarding student conduct as presented in executive session? Motion by Ms. O'Donnell. Do we have a second? Second. And a second by Ms. Grant. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Aye. Noting again that Ms. Malone abstains, that motion passes. That then brings us into student recognition. Congratulations again to all the awardees. It's great to have such amazing leaders in our schools. Okay, that then is going to bring us into public comment. If there's anyone from the public that would like to make a public comment, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Dorothy Neth-Coonan, 40 Donovan Court. First of all, I just kind of want to mention, and I've said this before, we're up to probably close to, if not more than, 50 stipulated agreements. So clearly, we might be in need of a policy revision, review, or something that needs to be looked into. So to me, I think it's a little discouraging because in the 10 years I sat on the board, we probably had 5. I just think it's a lot. And I know that we're under a different environment today, but it's an environment that we need to also move with. My other thing is I want to speak about the event that took place yesterday. I was receiving a lot of calls from a lot of people and a lot of messages by parents whose children felt very unsafe. And I know that the end result was not as terrifying as what people were experiencing at the time. And I know that other schools now are starting to visit the possibility of metal detectors. Not sure if we need to go that far yet. Wands or one entry point door entrance to reduce any disruption or possibility of somebody bringing in something that doesn't belong in school. I know that your first priority has been and always will be the safety of students. Students always come first when it comes to safety. That also includes the staff, administration, and anyone else involved in the school. So I'm hoping that at some point you're going to assemble a committee that would perhaps review some of the policies that you have in place and maybe some of the policies that other surrounding towns are reviewing to maybe adjust policies or maybe add a new policy that would basically provide a more safer, not safer environment, but it would allow people to feel more safe when they're coming to school. So, thank you.
Thank you. If there's any other members of the public that would like to offer public comment, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. And I'll do one last call for public comment. Seeing none, that brings us into the superintendent's report. Superintendent Montini.
It is my pleasure to reintroduce the principals of our elementary schools that are here. Well, I guess I should rephrase. Sorry, we have more. If I could have Mrs. Goodrich, Mrs. Murphy-Salvucci, and Mrs. LaChance come up to the podium. They are going to share their presentation related to pieces of the strategic plan for Andrew Avenue, Salem, and Western Elementary Schools.
Oh, yeah, that probably won't be a good idea. That I'm going to say right here. I just wanted to thank you all for having us here tonight to share parts of our strategic plan that is helping us build those strong classroom communities and move towards academic excellence in all of our schools. So Brenda, Lisa, and I will each be talking about things that are happening in all of our schools. And while it may seem like we're focused on things in our own schools, rest assured they're happening in all 3. We just don't want to be repetitive. I got to take it off.
So every year, we always begin by looking at data. So we always think about where are we? We want to make sure we're planning goals that are challenging our students and making sure that we have action steps in place that will get our students to these goals. So here is just a glimpse of our third grade collective and fourth grade Smarter Balance testing results, 2021-22. And these percentages are students at or above benchmark. And as you see, we have our work cut out for us. The next slide is our beginning of year data. So this is the data that we collected in September with our students. The TRC refers to reading comprehension, and the DIBELS refers to the smaller components that help students read, like sounding out words and reading fluency. So again, you'll see our scores and where we fell. These are, again, percentage of students at or above grade level. So these help us plan steps in our strategic plan so that we will ensure each and every student grows, which leads us to our first priority, which is under teaching and learning. And so Lisa is going to talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay, so our first priority is making sure that all students are experiencing high quality learning experiences in the classrooms every day. And we are going to do that by posting learning targets, which are student goals that are set by the teacher in student-friendly language with success criteria. So students are understanding that, and they know how to reach those goals in their classrooms. We are also planning for acceleration strategies, which is academic access for all students in the classroom. They do this by the standards walls, posting student work so students can see models every day. Tip charts, which are listing academic vocabulary in each subject, scaffolding, formative assessments, and specific feedback to move the learning forward. We also have our new curriculum in kindergarten, which is illustrative math. So students have opportunities for thinking about math and really developing number sense. The kindergarten teachers have taken this on and are really excited about it, and they are helping our teachers understand what it's about and getting them excited for the rollout. Students also experience explicit phonics instruction in their classrooms every day, and also guided reading and book clubs. In math, students are goal setting individual goals within their iReady, so they understand where they are, where they need to go, and how they're going to get there. And we're using growth monitoring checks. So the teachers are conferring with their students, and students are really understanding what specific skills they need in math to grow in the general education curriculum. And of course, we have our EL support and our special education support so that we're reaching all learners in our classrooms every day.
So as you can see, based on all the things that Lisa shared, we have a lot of learning that we're doing here. So we have 3 priority areas that we're working on. We want to develop competence in teaching of reading and writing. We have a new phonics scope and sequence that we're working on. And we want to continue to perfect all of our literacy strategies and literacy techniques that we have been doing. We want to implement illustrative math in our kindergarten rooms. And we also want to make sure at the same time we're building up the curriculum and the research-based practices that we're going to use in math grades 1 to 4. So overall, we want to improve our math instruction. And we want our teachers to reflect. We want them to think about their current practices, think about their new learning, and think about what changes and shifts that they could make to ensure we are reaching each and every one of our children. Some collective actions that we're doing, we're utilizing our coaches. At Western, we have coaching cycles. We have a literacy coach, a math coach, and this year, we're so happy we have a TESOL coach. And so those coaches are working with specific teachers and coaching cycles, and they have specific areas that they're working to develop. And in having coaching cycles, what it really does is it lets the coach and the teacher really have some significant time together. So they work weekly with one another. They're able to get into classrooms. They're able to co-plan, analyze student work, make suggestions, give feedback, and move those classes forward. When one coaching cycle ends, another will begin with another coach. It's really great to have that concentrated work one-on-one with teachers and staff. Other things that we are doing, we're utilizing data to assist teachers in making instructional decisions. So data can be some of those assessments that we talked about earlier, but data can also be our assessments that are within our curriculum, student work samples, and we want to make sure we're looking at what students can do and what they need to do and continue to move them forward. We have district-wide look-fors in math. So when we're visiting classrooms, coaches as well as principals know what we should be looking for so that we can provide real direct feedback to teachers and that we are collectively all on the same page about what best practices look like. And again, as Lisa said, we have acceleration modules. So we want to make sure we know we have students in all over. We have students that struggle in certain areas. We have students that excel in other areas. There's lots of different pockets. So we want to make sure each and every student gets what they need. So we're looking to using those acceleration modules to better differentiate and to close the gaps where they are, while also challenging the students that do have it so we can continue to push them forward. So those are some of our targeted professional learning goals.
So as Brenda and Lisa mentioned, there are tons of things that we're implementing in our schools that support adult and student learning. I'm going to talk a little bit about our systems for monitoring learning so we can make sure that we're always continually moving students forward. We have intervention services for students who aren't meeting benchmarks in math, reading, and intervention services for social emotional needs as well. We have interventionists in all of our schools that are trained and supported by our instructional coaches. This year, we took a lot of time to train our interventionists so they're using the exact same explicit phonics instruction strategies that our teachers are using in their classrooms, and our coaches are providing them with constant feedback and support as well. Progress monitoring all of those students on a regular basis. So depending on the level of intervention, that leads us to determine how much progress monitoring they need, whether it's weekly or biweekly. So that way we're always making decisions quickly and we're able to move that learning forward. This year at Salem, our teachers are actually doing the progress monitoring. So the interventionists are seeing the students, the teachers are doing the progress monitoring, and that helps them connect to their work in the classroom and those guided reading groups and that flexible small groups that are happening in their classrooms. They know exactly how their students are doing, and they continue those conversations with interventionists and coaches to move those students forward. Data meetings, I'm kind of jumping out of order there, but we have our data meetings and our weekly PLCs in which we review student work samples and use those student work samples to help drive the next steps in instruction. So that way we're always making sure that we're focused on what students need. Formative assessments and that specific actionable feedback are two areas that are part of our acceleration modules for this year. So as Brenda mentioned, we're continuing with that professional development on those acceleration strategies. And part of our work this year is to refine our formative assessments and our feedback to make those things support learning more. Formative assessments, those are not necessarily graded, right? They are just little checkpoints throughout lessons that help teachers know what their next steps are. And so those formative assessments happen continuously, and it helps drive those next teacher moves. And with those formative assessments comes feedback. And the feedback is not just good job. It's very much so focused on the learning target and what steps teachers need to help students with or students need to make to reach those learning targets. So it's very much so specific, and it's happening right there in the moment during those lessons. And then at the end, I have math recovery strategies there. So all of our math consultants are being trained as math recovery specialists, which is amazing. They're heading into year 2 of that training. And so what that does is they are able, through the training they received, they're able to really pinpoint what students' exact needs are. And so by being able to pinpoint children's exact needs, they're able to figure out where they are in that math progression of learning and make steps to move students in the right direction. And with this, like new learning that they have, they're able to intervene earlier before students get too far behind their peers. The next thing we're going to talk about is priority 2, which is climate and culture. You want that, not that. I'll keep the clicker.
So the first component of climate and culture is that I'm going to talk about is positive behavioral supports and interventions. I'm a champion of PBIS. I really love it and love the work that we do with it. You can see here is our positive behavior support matrix for our expectations for our students. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about it as a speed limit sign. So if we are driving down the road and see a speed limit sign, we know the expectation is 55 miles an hour. We look at our speedometer and we slow down. So this is our speed limit sign, like our speed limit sign for our students. This specifically spells out and defines all of the behaviors in our school that we expect of students and in every area of the school, including the bus. We have explicit lessons connected to each of these areas and these expectations. So we use this to recognize students who are doing the right thing all of the time. You heard me recognize 2 super scholars. We use that language. It's so exciting when we hear parents using that language as well. There's a picture here. We have super scholar luncheons once a month to recognize 2 students in each classroom who are doing the right thing all of the time. We also use this for logical consequences. So students who are not following these expectations, we use those as teachable moments. We have positive timeouts, loss of privileges, so that they really understand how to get to their expected behavior in school to make sure that they're learning at their best. We collect data on the behaviors to make sure that students are getting the interventions that they need to be super scholars in their classrooms all of the time. And of course, we partner with families for strategies, especially for attendance and with student behavior. It's a great connection, and we see a lot of success when we partner.
So in addition to PBIS, we use something called Ruler. So Ruler comes from the Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence. It's work by Mark Brackett. And we've actually embedded Ruler into our schools the past couple of years. And so we really began by teaching the teachers about Ruler and why emotions matter. So Ruler stands for recognize, understand, label, express, and regulate emotions. And it seems real easy until you actually try to do it. So our schools have become very emotional intelligent. So we use this strategy of Ruler to help students when they are struggling. Teachers began the process when we first were learning about it. Teachers would be trying to label, to recognize, understand, and label their own emotions. And we pretty much year 1 just took care of each other, trying to figure out how this works with us as adults. So Mood Meter is one big piece of the Ruler initiative. This is a mood meter right here. And so the premise behind it is all emotions matter. So there are components. Red might be things like being agitated or annoyed. Blue might be feelings like being sad or depressed or bored. Green, things like cool, calm, chill. The kids learn all different kind of vocabulary that fits within this mood meter. And yellow is more like excited, high energy, high levels. And so we teach the students that every emotion is okay. Every emotion is normal. Every emotion is typical. And we really want to make students understand that because people have all kinds of emotions. And so students not only learn emotional vocabulary, which you can see some posted, they also at Western, we call it Mood Up. And so every day they go into classrooms and they put where they're at in the morning on their class mood meter. In this kindergarten class, you'll see pictures. So kids have their photograph, they stick it in the quadrant that they are at. This helps the teacher, it gives them feedback on how the class is feeling. And it sometimes helps the teacher also determine what kind of activities they want to do, understanding where their kids are coming in. If kids are coming in the red, that might mean that the teacher wants to call them over and talk to them. Did they have a rough morning? Is there anything that teacher can do to help them? And what I love about this is the kids see where each other are at and they learn to help one another. And so that is the mood meter right there. And another piece of Ruler is creating a class charter. So a class charter is basically the rules that the class agrees upon. They create that together. It's a promise that they make to one another as a classroom community. So they not only create it, but then they create action steps of how they're going to do it. So they're going to be kind to one another, but how are they going to do that? They're going to ask for permission when they borrow each other's things. They're going to help one another. They're going to encourage one another. So you'll often notice teachers referring to their charters during lessons. So if they're going to have them do a group activity, they might remind them that, what part of our charter do we want to remember when we're doing this activity? And again, being cooperative. It's also a really great way when a student is not able to follow their charter to bring it back to the charter. What on our charter can help you right now? You're having a tough time? Go to the charter and see what you can do to help yourself. And it promotes them to be independent. You'll also notice the kids always sign their charters. Some in this class did their handprints, others draw pictures, others sign. So it's a nice way to really show rules that were created by students for their class. And then another idea, a part of Ruler, is learning how, when you're not feeling so great, how you manage those emotions. Because we all have a school day ahead of us, and we need to be productive members of our community. And so what do we do when we're not feeling so great? So the kids learn lots of strategies. One in particular is called a meta moment, where they've learned how to identify what it feels like in their body when something's wrong. So they were rushed in the morning, they didn't eat breakfast, they come in, they're disheveled, and they feel out of sorts. They learn what that feels like in their body. And every student, every adult is very different. Then they learn to decide what strategies, because we teach them all these strategies, what strategies they can use to help them get in a better place. We want to teach them healthy coping strategies. And we as adults learned a lot of healthy coping strategies as we did this work. So one of the coping strategies in this picture over here is a You Are Loved corner. So students talked about when they're their best self, what does that look like? What does that feel like? Where are they? I know I'm at the beach when I'm my best self. So I can envision that and I can calm myself down. Well, in this first grade class, they love their families. They miss their families. So they created a You Are Loved corner. And so when they are starting to feel like not their best self or feeling in the red and they need a moment, they go to that area, they look at those pictures of those families, and then they might do other things like belly breathing, 5-finger breathing. There's a whole bunch of different techniques the kids learn along the way to sort of help them de-escalate and get back to a place where they can be productive. And lastly, I just wanted to highlight, we have wonderful support staff in our schools. And so they teach social emotional lessons in the classrooms. And I think in most of our schools, that's weekly. So we have certain staff assigned to certain classes. They go in once a week. So they're developing a nice connection with those classrooms and with those students. And they teach lessons on things like positive character traits, respect, responsibility, and that comes from the Character Strong curriculum. And so again, we want to make sure each and every child has what they need, because we're all different and we all are going to experience a whole range of emotions each and every day.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about 2 new initiatives that we have started this year. They marry really well with Ruler and positive behavior support that Lisa and Brenda just talked about. The exciting thing about these two initiatives are that teachers were trained and are helping roll it out in schools. So trauma-informed restorative practices training, this was 6 full days last year. Teams of teachers and administrators attended the training. Joe Brummer led our sessions. He wrote a book on trauma-informed education, and we received training in how to support students who live trauma. We know from studies that many students have had adverse childhood experiences, and they could be anything from divorces to parents losing jobs. We know that everyone reacts differently to those types of things happening in their lives. With the pandemic, there's been an increase in students who have elevated anxiety, and this supporting students with this trauma-informed lens really important. So this year, teachers who attended the training, they worked this summer, and they created professional development for their schools. And so they've been working with their colleagues on mindfulness practices, empathy, how to support and de-escalate students who are struggling, and really just looking at your lens of trauma and really taking a moment to connect with the student, help them regulate, and then figure out what's going on. And it goes perfectly with Ruler, right? It absolutely goes perfectly with Ruler. There is a component of it where you're doing a respect agreement, which ties beautifully to those charters. What does it look like to be respectful in the classrooms? It ties into the charter. The other aspect and the other initiative that we've been working on is responsible classroom, which is amazing. So this summer, teachers and administrators did a 5-day training in which we were taught responsive classroom, the responsive classroom approach. It blends social emotional learning, high expectations for students, and academics beautifully. And those teachers also are helping us roll out that professional development this year. I know at Salem, the teams of teachers from Responsive Classroom, the teams of teachers from Restorative Practices met together with our instructional coaches, our leadership team, and we helped develop a strategic plan together, and we planned the professional development together. And I know it was similar in the other schools as well. And so with Responsive Classroom, we spend a lot of time talking about what the expectations are for students. How do students want to feel? What are their hopes and dreams for the year? And what kind of things they're going to do to get there? Again, goes right back to those charters. Those expectations are very, very clear, and tied to those are logical consequences, whether it's a loss of privilege, or if students are working in groups and are disruptive, maybe they need a minute to work by themselves. But they're all very respectful and make sense with the situation. They're not punitive at all. It really just helps hold children accountable and kind of just set this stage for the focus obviously being on those academics and being on learning. With that, we also have a de-escalation space or a calm down corner, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in my next slide. But at the bottom, this is the best way for us to think about it, is you're using those responsive classroom strategies through a trauma-informed lens. Some of the practices that we're rolling out in our schools are morning meetings, closing circles, our cozy corners or our de-escalation spaces, and quiet time. So it took a good amount of planning on our part to make sure there was times in the schedules to have all of these things happening while still making sure we're focused on academics as well. So every single morning we start with a morning meeting. During that time, children are building that sense of community. They are getting to know each other, and they are learning how to appropriately interact with others, like we would in adults, right? And I laugh, I'm in some of the classrooms and the teachers are actually saying, you need to make eye contact with the person next to you. Make sure you're not mumbling and little things like that, but it's really teaching them and it's really building that strong sense of community. This year, we're working on those in a community building sense. Next year, we're going to roll out support for teachers to be able to do more restorative practices and restorative circles as well. Our closing circles is a beautiful time to just wrap up the day. It's a quick 10 minutes at the end of the day in which students come together and they share the highlights of their day, what they learned, what they enjoyed about it. And it helps students, because you know how they go home, and my kids do this too, and you say, what'd you do at school? And they say, I don't know. right? So it's like the last thing, and they're talking about what was their favorite part of their day or what was great about their day, and it gives them something to remember to go home and talk about. And it just kind of, again, builds that nice sense of community and keeps that sense of calm. Cozy corners, de-escalation spaces, we call them different things in different rooms, but every single classroom and some of our shared spaces have them. And those are places where children can go if they need a minute to just kind of de-escalate. Responsive classroom teaches us to make sure that we give the expectations for that area. So maybe they go and they have a timer and they come back after a couple of minutes and they're ready to get back to learning. Those spaces have things that'll help them calm down. So it could be like fidgets or something like along those lines if they need to wiggle. It could be something like coloring, or it could be more like a sensory, like something to some kids need, like, thank you, the sensory input, that's the word I was thinking of. But whatever it is that they need, that's in that corner, and there's stuff there for them to help calm down and get themselves regulated and back to learning. And then quiet time. So quiet time is a brief few minutes when they come back in from recess or lunch. Kids tend to be elevated during that time. There's a lot of running around at recess, a lot of interactions, and it just gives them that time to like center themselves and calm down. Sometimes most of the classrooms have some sort of nice relaxing music going on, and maybe they're reading or they're catching up on something in the morning that they didn't get done, but it's just a time for them to kind of settle and get themselves focused so they're ready to learn for the rest of the afternoon. And there's some pictures of some examples of our calm corners and an example of a circle, a morning circle in one of our classrooms.
So in closing, we really couldn't do all of this work without the families. We are really excited we're able to get the families back into the building, back into classes, volunteering. Our PTOs play a huge role in making this happen. We have lots of activities both during the school day, after school, at night, on the weekends, so that we could accommodate and get parents engaged in their students, engaged in learning about what their children are learning. Our parent liaisons play a huge role in allowing us the opportunity to make all of this happen. So whether it's a scavenger hunt or a math escape room or sight word bingo during the day, we want the families in, we want them learning alongside their children, and we want the kids and parents to see us learning as fun and that we're united in these efforts. Parent volunteers, we are so lucky. I think all of us are so lucky. We have great parents that come in all the time. Again, family engagement during the school day, that started again last year, and we're really excited to be able to do that again this year. And then collaborating with our community, YMCA, the library, Naugatuck Youth Services has been great. Partnering with Naugatuck High School. I know at Western, the Naugatuck High School students come in weekly and work in our classrooms with our students. They provide role models, they help. It's just a wonderful opportunity for both the students and our students as well. And then of course we always do things like, meet and greet, or our kindergarten academy, parent conferences, and those sorts of things. But to me, it's really about all those other pieces that really get the families engaged and excited about school. And then the next slide is just a few pictures showing some of our family engagement in the various schools. So we're very thankful to have our amazing families and our amazing students. So thank you all. Thank you all for what you do for our schools, and we'll take any questions that you might have. Well, we set goals. So each school sets goals based on where we start. So yes, in March we'll do a lot of looking at informal assessments or informal assessments or curriculum-based assessments between now and then. But then in January we'll do all of our district level assessments again. So we want to make sure we're in the right direction. At Western, we do a data dive right after the middle of the year, right after January, and we start creating action plans for each and every class. Every teacher makes an action plan. This is where we are. This is where we need to be. What are we going to do about it? There is a sense of urgency. We need to make sure each and every kid moves. I think that's why the coaches are so vital. Having an opportunity for our coaches to meet with our teachers weekly, and we all have that within our schedules. So there's one block every single week that they get to meet with the coaches, and so they're able to really fine tune what those groups of teachers need. So is it phonics instruction? Is it an upcoming lesson? Is it an assessment that they're unclear about? We want to make sure before we give it that we are all on the same page with the same priorities. So those opportunities allow for that.
And the new initiatives that we're rolling out are things that we really need. So we really needed some strategies and some ways to help set that really clear sense of community that's focused back on learning after coming back from like the last couple of years where kids were in and out. So I think that it may seem like it's an added thing on teachers' plates, but it really is just like the basis and the foundation for everything. The new phonics curriculum is going to be a game changer. Teachers really wanted that and needed that. And as a former reading consultant, I know that that was really important for us to move that instruction forward. And I think that we're going to see gains there.
And it's really not about doing more, it's about doing it better.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I just have a question. What are you doing different with the math now that you were doing from the original curriculum that's making a difference?
So our new math curriculum is it's great because what it does is it really builds on certain skills in certain grades. So kindergarten is focused on problem solving through counting, being able to start to add, subtract, and compare number sizes, and it really gives them a strong foundation. And then they take that and move it into first grade, where they're building on that even more. In each grade does the exact same thing. So I think what it's doing, it's really building kids' conceptual understanding of these processes, so they're able to be problem solvers and not just rote memory facts.
Great. Any other questions?
I noticed.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So that's Salem. Yep. So I have Mrs. DeMayo back there. And other schools are doing the exact same thing. What we noticed is that kids were not necessarily telling their teachers during the day things that were bugging them or things that they wanted to talk about. And they would go home and tell their parents. And then the parents would call me and I would say, oh my goodness, they never talked to their teacher. So in talking to, actually a parent gave me the idea. And she said, wouldn't it be cool if you did like a things I wish my teacher knew jar? And so I have one in my office. And there's one in every single classroom in our building. So that way, and it could be something simple like, you know, like I don't understand this math lesson, or so-and-so is bugging me, or I really like your outfit today. But they can leave little notes for their teachers, and the teachers can address them as they need to. Yeah.
Great. Thank you guys very much. Very informative and great to see what you guys are doing. Superintendent Montini.
Thank you. In closing, in regards to their presentation, thank you all very much. Everything that we do is in service of teaching and learning. And while a strategy might be up there in regards to social and emotional learning, that's really to help students get into a place where we know that learning can be maximized. And that while we may talk about something other than Thank you, Mr. Lickey. I know you referred it back to me. The next item in the superintendent's report is a memo. I will keep it brief. As you know, we concluded our fall conferences. There was a change in our policy, so I thought let's start. So as you know, So, our school will be putting on strategy prior to the March conferences. With people who are more proactive, we're going to be reaching out to them. People will come rather, be called, etc. There'll be a plan so that we can increase that if we would like to have more. High school. Just because students are older doesn't mean they need parents any less. Reality is they need them even more. Adolescents, of course, on the right, we have a change in policy, really because of change in law. That we need to provide opportunities of choice in regards to in-person, telephonic, and or virtual conferences. So 3/4, the garnet part of the graph of our conferences were held in person. 10% for virtual and 14.something% for live. So we'll continue to track this over time and work to increase our parent conference participation rates.
Great. Any questions? Great. Thank you for that information. That brings us to our monthly reports. Our first report is our student rep report. So I'll turn it over to Ruby and Josephine.
Okay, so for our November report, we start with the end of our first quarter at NHS, which means that grades are closing for this quarter and students are being able to check their progress, making sure that they're on track and getting to connect with their teachers.
One thing that we highlighted last meeting that's coming up quickly is Spirit Week next week at the high school. There's a ton of school pride activities. They came out with the actual days yesterday. There's like a Decades Day, a Color Wars, anything but a backpack, fun stuff. And then the homecoming dance will close out Spirit Week next Friday, which is really exciting.
Also this week, NHS Sunrise hosted their 3rd annual Climate Week. Students were able to participate in an Art for Action project. So we did chalk drawings on the driveway in front of the high school. We planned to do a community cleanup, but we had to reschedule for next Wednesday. Sunrise members participated in a book club, and we did a Color Wars competition where each grade wore a different color to raise awareness for climate action. We also sold stickers in the main lobby in the mornings to try to fundraise for a project that we're planning for Sunrise, where we get to offset the carbon footprint of our school.
In addition to that, 10 Naugatuck High School students were trained as part of the Youth Leadership and Peer Mentoring Program with Naugatuck Youth Services. For as long as I've been at NHS, Naugatuck Youth Services has been really present in the school, which I think is really good. Like, they're always there in the lunchroom, which I think is great, but this particular peer mentoring program, the students will be going out into the community after Thanksgiving and starting to be role models with younger students.
And then finally, we have a new club at NHS, which is Greyhound Nation, which is a student athlete program for promoting sportsmanship and supporting sports teams at games and events and participating in community service opportunities for student athletes. It's an extension of the CIAC Class Act program. So, yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you guys very much. That then brings us to our facility use report. Are there any questions on the facility use report? go to our finance. Any questions on the finance? Seeing none, we'll go to our fire drill crisis report. Any questions on the fire drill? Seeing none, we will go into the band field trip to Washington, D.C. Could I have a motion to approve the band field trip to Washington? We have a motion by Ms. Grant. Do we have a second? And a second by Ms. Gallo. Any discussion?
So congratulations to the parents, because there are a lot of parents involved in this, and the students. We'll be cheering you on.
Yes, 100%. Yay. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes. That brings us to another field trip. Can I have a motion to approve the civil rights field trip?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Ms. Makowski. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second by Ms. Grant. Any discussion?
Can I just say something again?
Yes.
This is a great opportunity here also. History, great, they'll be working together here. I think it's only about 15 students going, but what they're going to learn and what they're going to bring back, great opportunity.
I agree. I actually said to Ms. Santana earlier that I wanted to chaperone.
Yeah.
They put a lot of miles in
Yeah.
4 days.
Yeah, sure.
So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. That brings us to old business. We have some policies that we discussed at our last meeting. So could I have a motion to approve BOE policy 5532, improve completion rates of FAFSA, and 5532R, administrative regulations as proposed? We have a motion by Ms. Grant. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Ms. Gallo. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. Could I then have a motion to approve BOE policy 3542.3, meal charging policy as proposed?
I'll make that.
We have a motion by Ms. Makowski. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Ms. Gallo. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. Can I then have a motion to approve BOE policy 4400, employee use of the district computer systems and electronic communications, and 4400R, administrative regulations as proposed?
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Grant. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second by Ms. Makowski. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. Can I then have a motion to approve BOE policy 5254, physical activity, undirected play, and student discipline as proposed? We have a motion by Ms. Gallo. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second by Ms. Makowski. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. Can I then have a motion to approve BOE policy 5148, student use of district computer systems and internet safety, and 5148R, administrative regulations as proposed?
I'll make that motion.
We We have a motion by Ms. Makowski. Do we have a second? And a second by Mr. Scully. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. That brings us to new business, which our first item of new business is BOE Policy 5149, use of private technology devices by students. Did you? Yeah. You have your memo.
Yep, I do. As discussed with the policy committee, this, like a number of the other policies, the changes made here were made to better reflect the array of private technological devices used by students and clarify that references to remote learning apply only if remote learning has been authorized in accordance with applicable law. So basically, it's a lot of cleanup in regards to changing email to electronic messaging and things that are in line with the previous policies that you just voted on.
Great. And that is a first read along with our next one, which is BOE Policy 6820, Parent-Teacher Communication, and 6820R, Administrative Regulations.
It's very minor. The policy, that I just shared data related to the different ways in which we must have parent conferences. The policy contained dates that are now past due. They need to be implemented. Those dates are now gone, so we removed those dates. And citations, updated legal citations, so minor changes.
Great. And then our next one is BOE Policy 5600R, Form 3 and Form 4, Notice of Sexual Harassment Allegations, Student to Student, and then Student to Employee.
So a new law requires a change to have a separate form if it's student to student or student to staff. Policy remains the same. The change in law required a new form. We've updated the two forms as part of the administrative regulations.
And then our last one that's a first read is BOE Policy 2500, Retention of Electronic Records and Information, and 2500R, the Administrative Regulations.
So I'll paraphrase, change in the law, but apparently it's the Office of Public Records Administrator revised its Form RC 075.1. There's not significant changes, but we needed to update the policy and accompanying regulations to reflect an updated form and make other technical edits like all of those other policies in line with listing out the computer devices and electronic messaging. So that change impacted 6 or 7 of the policies, as you can see for consistency.
Great. And again, those are all first reads, so they will be on our next meeting for votes. So if you have questions, read those throughout the next month. Bring those with you. That then brings us to a donation, which we always like donations. Our high school class of 1972 would like to make a donation in the amount of $1,700 to the Dartmouth High School athletic program for the purchase of a sound system for the fitness center. So, could I have a motion to accept the donation from the class of 1972 in the amount of $1,700 for the purchase of a sound system for the fitness center? A second? And a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll just first say thank you to the class of 1972. We appreciate it. All those in favor? Any opposed? And any abstentions? Seeing none, that passes. That brings us to the Early Childhood Center contract approval. Could I have a motion to approve the agreement between the Naugatuck Board of Education and the Early Childhood Center, CSEA, SEIU, Local 2001, for the period 2022 through 2025? We have a motion by Ms. Grant. Do we have a second? And a second by Ms. Gallo. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. That brings us to the Naugatuck Administrative Negotiation Association contract approval. Could I have a motion to approve the agreement between the Naugatuck Board of Education and the Naugatuck Administrative Negotiating Association for July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2026? We have a motion by Ms. Makowski. Do we have a second? And a second by Ms. O'Donnell. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. That then brings us to the HVAC education specifications.
We have an opportunity from the Connecticut, well, I'll say the Connecticut State Department of Education, but really through DAS and the Division of School Construction. There's an opportunity to apply for an HVAC grant soon, by December 1st. We have been working with an engineer for some of our schools in the event that apply for a grant or funding. So we are looking to approve ed specifications for the installation of the HVAC system and sure that we need ed specifications to apply for. Mr. Scully's been a part of a presentation from the engineer. So has Mr. Lai, Mr. Bernardi. We are seeking to go to the town building committee and the purchasing committee to make some motions so that we can submit an application. Should we move forward, we'll have more information and presentation shared with you in the December meeting, or if that doesn't work out, a special meeting for those sole purposes. Typically, so you know, HVAC systems are not reimbursed by the state. You only get reimbursement on these systems if you are renovating new or a new build, which is why we're looking to take advantage of. We're grateful for the opportunity, but we also know that there's, I think it's 150 million for all 169 towns. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, but we are working fast and diligently now to apply. Questions?
Yeah. And I trust Mr. Scully's opinions on these matters. So, could I have a motion to approve the education specifications for the HVAC project at Hopbrook Elementary School? We have a motion by Ms. Gallagher, a second. And a second by Ms. Makowski. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Great. That brings us to the approval of the minutes. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 13th, 2022 regular monthly Board of Education meeting? We have a motion by Ms. O'Donnell. Do we have a second? And a second by Mr. Scully. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And any abstentions? That motion passes. That brings us to communications. Our first item of communications is the CABE CAPS Conference, which is the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education and the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, which is happening on November 18th through the 19th in Groton. I know there's a number of us attending this year, so it'll be, I think it'll be a good conference. And I only then have one other piece of communication. I will be appointing Kim Gallo to the facilities and curriculum subcommittees. So, any other board communications?
I just want to communicate.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Any other communications? Seeing none, could I have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion by Ms. Makowski. Do we have a second? And a second by Ms. O'Donnell. All those in favor? Any opposed? We're adjourned.